Hello YouTube, Lone Soldier 86 right back with you on this Mystic Cave level. And in this section, I wanted to talk about these 2D textures. And when we talked about the foliage before, in fact, what I had done before in one of the previous videos is I had made foliage in sort of a three-dimensional square configuration. And I looked at that and I thought it didn't look very convincing. For instance, I might have had these, this is really rough, but the walls were this texture and say the top was this texture. And, you know, it's okay, but you can clearly see that it's a box. So rather than mess with that, you know that the illusion of that is going to be, you know, kind of broken. What I decided to do is create just simple 2D textures. And with them being kind of staggered like this, where we have one in the foreground and then one in the background, we do give sort of an element of depth. And then keep in mind as well is that we're going to have a actual background, which will have these textures as well. So we get kind of a depth, frankly, from the old parallaxing days from the 16-bit era, where we had different layers of backgrounds. And with them kind of moving back and forth from each other, it gives kind of a three-dimensional effect. And with that being said, we are able to create that three-dimensional effect using just simple 2D planes. When I create a 2D plane, there's some things I want to show you really quickly. I'm going to go on the back side here so I don't accidentally interrupt anything I have with the DK level hanging out in the background. We're going to go this way backwards for a second, and we're going to create just a real simple 800 by 800 2D plane. Now, this is something I had to learn with SketchUp. There's a white face, and then there's a darker gray face. And this is important to remember because the white face is the front and the gray is the back. And for some reason, whenever I make these 2D planes, it tends to be that the gray is facing forward rather than the white. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that we reverse faces. I right-clicked on this square that I created and reverse faces, and now the white is facing us. This is really important because when I used to make levels with these 2D textures, I would make these and then get it all done, complete, rendered, put it in the game, and then not see the texture show up. And I'm going, what in the world is going on? Well, then I found a hack that you could use the camera to kind of look around the level. And lo and behold, as I turn the level around, the texture is facing the wrong way. It's facing backwards. So I learned really quickly that whenever you are using Google SketchUp, make sure that the white face is facing forward whenever you do a 2D texture like we have done here. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. We can create a component for this as well and move this into the area. We can resize it. It's nice that we accounted for the tessellation, so we can create it and make it as long as we want or as tall as we want. And that's really all there is to it. Over here, we use that lantern texture. It's kind of like something to fill in, make it a little more interesting. And that's really, really simple. That can be moved around as well. It can be resized. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that if we resize it, we're going to get that lantern to show up again. It's going to keep showing up because it's tessellated, right? So it's going to show up again and again and again as we keep going up and up and up. So I wanted to make sure I only positioned this so that we would only see the lantern once. And, so that I had to account for that a little bit. And then, I used a different 2D texture for the foreground versus the background. And I figured because this one has a little bit more negative space, black space, it's a little bit easier to differentiate the foreground from the background. So this one, the busier ones in the front and the less busy ones in the background. So that's a little bit about the 2D textures themselves. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the three-dimensional objects like the platforms and the pillars and the walls.